On a day when the country records of up to 374 cases of the dreaded coronavirus, with the county of Mombasa now turning into an epicenter. A very good evening to you and welcome to the very first episode of Midweek, where we bring you the latest in the country as we focus on the economical aspect of the rising issues. My name is Alan Owino and our sign language interpreter for today is Anne Wairimu. Now on to our top stories for today. One patient has succumbed to COVID-19, bringing the death toll to 15. This is even as Mombasa grapples with an ever-rising number of new infections. The country now has 374 cases of the coronavirus.
Mombasa County is now the hotspot for coronavirus after recording 9 more cases on Wednesday. Nairobi County recorded only 1 case out of the 10 cases recorded in the country in the last 24 hours.
In the last 24 hours, we have tested a total of 508 samples from 14 counties. Out of this number, 10 tested positive for coronavirus, and of these, 9 are from Mombasa and 1 from Nairobi.
1 more patient died, bringing the COVID-19 death toll to 15.
We are also urging Mombasa County residents to rededicate themselves in this fight and support the county government of Mombasa and national government in helping to contain this virus.
Since the first case of coronavirus was reported in the country on March 13th, most of the cases that were reported came from abroad. Now the ministry says the infections are being spread at the community level.
And it is important that I emphasize at this point that indeed, from the data that we are synthesizing, we are noting that in the beginning of this scourge, we had most of the cases being imported cases, but right now, the tables have turned and most of our cases are coming from local transmission within our communities.
The Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Mercy Mwangangi, also urged Kenyans not to isolate the patients who have recovered from COVID-19 and instead welcome them back in the society.
While we celebrate these recoveries, we are disturbed that reintegration has not been easy for these people. We have reports of stigmatization by members of the community for our recovered cases. And this is unfortunate, considering our constant appeal and massive education to ensure that people are accepted back in the community. That the only way we can be able to beat this disease is if we avoid issues like stigmatization.
Kawangware in Nairobi and Kibokoni, Mombasa are the recent areas to record COVID-19 cases in 2 consecutive days. But do you know the procedure being undertaken once a COVID-19 case has been reported? Francis Kuria, the Director of Public Health, explains.
What normally happens is that when a case turns positive, we send out our ambulances through the rapid response teams to pick up those positive cases. Another group then follows that team that does contact tracing around that case. Some of them who may have symptoms then are isolated immediately, and others who do not, sometimes we take samples for testing and advise them on further quarantine measures.
Over 3 million cases of coronavirus have been reported worldwide, with over 200,000 deaths recorded. In Kenya, the number of cases stands at 374 and 129 recoveries.
We do hope the county of Mombasa gets ahead of this and tackles it before it blows into something else. Let's move on to other stories. With 13 counties having reported the cases of the coronavirus disease, the need for coordinated efforts to ensure that all counties are ready to combat the deadly virus has led the Council of Governors to synchronize county preparedness in the wake of the pandemic. And as Josh Onsari reports, county bosses have been busy.
During the weekly updates, the Council of Governors on Wednesday revealed that the previously contested 30 billion shillings allocation from the Treasury to beef up coronavirus containment measures remains, and the counties will receive their equitable share.
There will be no reduction on the 30 billion county equitable share for 2019-2020. We have conducted the Commission on Revenue Allocation, which will come up with a formula for allocation of these funds among the 47 county governments.
The Council of Governors has emphasized that all counties have put the necessary measures to curb the spread of the disease.
Last week, I reported a total of 10 testing centers countrywide. We now have additional 6 testing centers. There is therefore going to be an enhanced testing of the virus, which will enable counties to respond appropriately.
Additionally, the national government, through the Nyumba Kumi initiative, has identified 1 million vulnerable households that will receive 2,000 Kenya shillings per month.
Counties have also mapped vulnerable households and mobilized resources to support 317,000 households. We urge the remaining 42 counties also to map households to ensure adequate measures are put in place to cushion the vulnerable.
The governors are calling on the national government to give proper guidelines in the protocols on border relations to avoid diplomatic rankles.
There is no protocol in place to deal with the cross-border movement of persons accessing the country through our porous borders to seek services.
We want to ask the national government, through Mheshimiwa Matiang'i, the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Internal Security, to engage the Ugandan government so that we ease the pressure that is there at the border.
So far, over 14,000 healthcare workers in the counties have been trained in a bid to boost county preparedness. Joash Onsare, TV47 Nairobi.
National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani has refuted claims that over 40 billion shillings has been spent in the fight against COVID-19. Instead, Yatani says 2.5 billion shillings will be spent by the end of the week in form of disbursements sent to the vulnerable people to cushion them, from the ravages of the pandemic.
Appearing before the Senate Ad Hoc Committee on Coronavirus, chaired by Senator Johnson Sakaja, Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani told the committee that the government has spent 2.6 billion shillings in the fight against coronavirus and not the claimed 40 billion shillings.
And if you might have followed, last week alone we released 8.5 billion for the traditional cash transfers, with a total of 1.3 million households benefited from that amount of money. Every month, 2,000. Or sometimes, delay of 2-3 months, and then they're given in bulk. And this money accessed through their own banks. Most of them, they have the bank card, and the identification process was 2 years ago, and it's ongoing. The 10 billion we're referring to is additional money.
Yatani told the senators that the government will be spending 1.3 billion shillings weekly on the cash payouts to the vulnerable and elderly, a program which will be rolled in the counties in few weeks' time.
We've already approved under Article 223 because of the emergency nature, 10 billion. And last week, 1.3 billion was already transferred using the M-Pesa route. After having identified and where there are no even the charges, the commissions have already been pre-negotiated with Safaricom. They go free. And you receive that 2,000 every week.
However, Yatani has warned tough times ahead due to reduced tax base and shrinking economy. The CS says the government has received only 6 billion shillings from the World Bank to fight the COVID-19 pandemic.
Even this week, 1.3 will be released to a number of those selected areas. Now, with the success of this, we are going now to cascade with the rest of the country. Chairman, those are the measures. There are a number of things.
Yatani says beside the vulnerable people, small business traders will benefit from the financial programs being run by the government during the coronavirus pandemic.
We are keen, and we've had a number of engagements that to some limited extent we have to open the economy. And I'm sure the last few days we have signed signs of engagement around the same.
Elizabeth Mutiku, TV47 Nairobi.
All right, let's now switch gears to matters education. NC Party leader Musalia Mudavadi has faulted the manner in which the Ministry of Education is handling the education crisis with assumptions that all students and pupils are able to conduct studies online. Speaking earlier today, Musalia said the ministry should instead come up with definitive measures on the way forward. Andreen Kilemi with the details.
What the country needs from the ministry are definitive messages on the way forward. As the bag continues to remain with us, it is expected that the Ministry of Education could get bona fide leaders of the key stakeholder entities in education in a constructive dialogue to reflect together and plan the way forward. So far, the Ministry of Education has only made random and ad hoc pronouncements. These casual and abrupt statements have mostly been given in the sidelines of Ministry of Health briefings on COVID-19.
All right, moving on. A desperate search and recovery mission by residents of Chesogon in Elgeyo-Marakwet County has led to the recovery of 4 bodies since the government abandoned the exercise last week. By the time the government called off the mission, 28 people were still missing. Calvin Chitwe reports.
It has been a desperate search for the remains of their loved ones using very crude tools in an area riddled with twisted debris, mud and flood waters. And the desperate efforts are paying off. Since Monday, residents of Chesogon in Elgeyo-Marakwet County have managed to recover 4 bodies out of the 28 that were still missing when the government decided to abandon the search mission last week.
Katika mila na desturi za Marakwet, si rahisi kuacha mtu tu kupotea. Watusaidie kutafuta wale ambao hatujawapata mpaka wakati huu.
The government called off the search operation, citing a myriad of challenges that included debris and muddy ground surfaces. There is confusion, however, over how many are still missing.
Kwanza wale ambao tulipoteza ni watu 28. Kati ya hao 28 wenye wamesikwa ni watu 4 pekee.
Baada ya kuweka maua, watu 3 sasa wamepatikana.
Ile mili ambayo tumepata kwa sasa ni 18. Tulikuwa tunatafuta watu 35, tumepata 18. Kwa hivyo kuna nyingine 17 ambayo haijapatikana.
The residents have vowed to continue with the operation being led by local teams in the hope of recovering all bodies of their loved ones in order to accord them decent burials as per their traditions. In total, 20 bodies have been recovered. The rest are body parts of different people who died when landslides and floods struck the area 11 days ago.
Kati watu wamepoteza watu 28, wanapatikana kiwiliwili, wanapatikana labda kichwa nusu, wanapatikana kifua nusu, wanapatikana mguu nusu. Madaktari wenye wanaenda wale wa akili, psychologists, ama wale watu ambao tunaita counselors.
The national government, in collaboration with the Elgeyo-Marakwet County, have begun a relocation process for people living in the area prone to landslides on the slopes of Elgeyo-Marakwet.
Most of people's landless, they are suffering. They are always on the receiving end when rains come and landslides and all other calamities that come to this side. So what we are requesting is that if all the stakeholders can come on board.
Residents of Embobut, Chesogon and Kipchumwa Mumwo are set to benefit from the relocation program. The program will be implemented by Kenya Water Towers Agency. Calvin Chitwa, TV47, Elgeyo-Marakwet County.
Now, the country is struggling not only with coronavirus, but also floods in different counties. Speaking during the daily briefing by Ministry of Health at Afi House, Nairobi, Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa has said that 29 counties have been affected by the floods. And as Lydia Gashomo reports, more than 116 people have died, while more than 100,000 families have been displaced by the floods.
This is some of the debris left behind by the flash floods that swept through here, leaving people homeless and others dead. In Garissa County, members of the County Assembly feel they have been left behind by the government since the flood victims in the county have not received any assistance.
The other day, there was a tragedy in Elgeyo-Marakwet County or West Pokot. the whole government machinery was out to offer emergency support. Why not here in Garissa County? Are we lesser citizens? We are saying the government should stop this double standard henceforth.
Galbet Ward MCA Abdulrazak Ismail has challenged the government to come up with a permanent solution to perennial floods in the county.
Whenever we have these calamities, there are no compensations that are given to our people. This time around, what we are demanding is a compensation to our people, both livelihoods, homesteads. If that is not taken care of, I think the other option that we have is to seek for legal redress.
Elsewhere in Narok County, Governor Samuel Ole Tunai has urged the residents in flood-prone areas to migrate to higher grounds.
Kwa sasa, afadhali watu waweze kuhama kwa muda, wakae mahali mpaka mvua uishe, ndio waweze kurudi, badala ya kukaa alafu hasara kubwa inaanza. Unapanga tu vitu zako vizuri, unafunga na wafunga boma vizuri, alafu muanze kuondoka mpaka wakati mvua ndio iishe, ndio tuweze kuendelea kuishi pamoja bila shida yote.
Devolution Cabinet Secretary Eugene Wamalwa has said the distribution of relief food to flood victims is ongoing, adding that measures put in place by the Ministry of Health will be followed during the distribution exercise.
As a ministry in charge of special programs, we have put measures in place to ensure we give support to all families affected. As of today, we have been able to dispatch over 40,000 bags of rice and other food and non-food items to over 24 counties affected by floods.
Some of the counties severely affected by floods and landslides include Elgeyo Marakwet and West Pokot. Lydia Gashomo, TV47.
Now on to a rather sad story where the residents of Buruburu are still in shock after one man was found burnt beyond recognition inside his vehicle this morning. Tracy Mukami reports the incident happened at the parking lot for the building in which the deceased lived with his family. Take a look.
These upsetting images are the scene that Buruburu Phase 5 residents woke up to Wednesday morning. After putting out a raging fire that consumed the car of one Terence Korir, neighbors found his body still strapped onto the driver's seat, burnt beyond recognition. While the police have not established whether the fire was intentional or accidental, the Office of the Directorate of Criminal Investigations has opened an investigation into the matter.
Our forensic investigators have been able to collect some samples from the vehicle, and we've sent them to the government laboratories for forensic analysis so that we can be able to conclusively say the cause of the fire.
The incident occurred next to the 36-year-old Terence Korir's house where he lived with his wife and children. Tracy Mukami, TV47, Nairobi.
Rather sad story indeed, and I hope the perpetrators to this incident will be caught up with in due time so that they can serve time, if that is what it means. That story brings us to the first break of this segment, and as usual, you can communicate with us on all our social media platforms. That's at TV47KE, or you might as well send me a direct tweet at Komowino with the hashtag midweek. Ladies and gentlemen, let's take a break, but don't go away. We'll be back with more. thank you very much for staying with us right here on Midweek. Now, in the event that you're joining us right now, remember, you can communicate with us on all our social media platforms. That's at TV47KE, or you might as well use the details on the bottom right of your screen to communicate to us. Now, in this second bit of the show, I'd love to jump into an interview where we'd love to take a deep dive into what it means to be in the hotelier industry, and also with regards to the directives that were given with the Ministry of Health that restaurants and businesses can resume normal operations. Now, my first guest via Skype is Magdalene Mweriri, who is the Managing Director of Cafe Deli Eateries. Magdalene?
Hello.
Hi, Magdalene. Can you get me?
Yes, I can get you.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us this evening, and I'd just love to jump into it straight away.
Okay.
All right. Now, just before the directive was given that the restaurants should shut down, it was normal business as usual. I'd just love for you to take us back to that time when the directive was given that the restaurants should shut down and normal business as usual. What was the feeling then? What was the mood that was going on at that time? What was going on in your mind?
We were already aware that the hospitality industry was going to be the hardest hit.
All right.
So what happened when we were given the directive that we needed to have takeaway and delivery services only? Of course, we had to close down our normal operations and concentrate on this directive,
All right.
which was not very good because we lost around 98% of our clients.
All right.
And the revenue. Yeah, so it was never the same after the first directive on the deliveries and takeaways.
Okay. Now, the biggest part of any business entity is usually the employees, because they play a very big role. And we've seen a number of companies and firms let go of their employees, others taking pay cuts. What did your franchise do? How did you handle the employees when the directive came down that restaurants were supposed to be shut down?
Yeah, we had to communicate to them and tell them what was going on.
Yeah.
That was very important.
Yeah.
Then, of course, it was not business as usual. So there's nothing they were going to do in the restaurants.
Yeah.
There was no work at that point.
Okay.
So we had to release them on unpaid leave
Okay.
until now, the point where we could resume back to the normal business.
All right. Now, even in the event that the business closed down, the employees have been taken home on paid leave. There are still other businesses that are actually going on, other restaurants that were doing home deliveries and continuing with business, even though it wasn't the normal way of doing businesses. For Cafe Deli, how did you handle business during this lockdown period?
We concentrated on takeaway and deliveries,
Yeah.
where we had a company which helped us do the deliveries.
All right.
So we have all our numbers online where clients could call in and book for deliveries. And then we also had people coming in for takeaways.
Okay.
And we had to maintain the 1 meter distance.
Yeah.
And we actually had to cut down on cash payments. We only accepted M-Pesa payments.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, the directive that was given just about 2 days ago that the ban has been lifted and restaurants were allowed to get back into operation under strict measures given by the Ministry of Health. I know this was a sigh of relief for many hoteliers. Now, how prepared are you to get back into business? Because certain guidelines that were given out would seem expensive in that manner, so to say, in terms of not being able to meet your cost because you'll be having lesser and lesser customers in the business space, and also in terms of testing. Just take us through, how ready are you as Cafe Deli to resume business?
Okay, first of all, that directive was welcomed.
Yeah.
But now the only problem is the implementation.
Yes.
They released the checklist on what we are supposed to do, and it had around 31 items on that checklist.
Yeah.
Where now the county officials will come and do the inspection after you've already done everything that is required of you.
All right.
So one of the issues was we needed to have all our employees tested.
Okay.
And I remember when the directive was given, we were told that when we go to any government labs, it was going to be free.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we went today but apparently they don't have the tests kits. So what that means is that now we need to go to the private.
All right.
And they're charging highly, because one person, as we speak, is around 10,000 to 12,000.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, just on the answer that you've given, you went to get the necessary directives and the necessary measures. You went to take the necessary measures that were given out by the Ministry of Health in terms of health, and you've mentioned that the test kits were not available, right?
Yes.
Did they communicate that this was going to be available at a certain date, or this was final?
No, we were only told that the test kits were ordered and they are waiting. So we are not sure when they are going to have them. So we need to go to the private hospitals to get the tests done.
So basically what I'm trying to understand is that they did not give you a definite date as to when you should come back and get the tests.
No.
Okay. Now, you've mentioned going through the private route, which is rather expensive, meaning you have to now incur this cost as an entity. Are you going to take this route?
For us to open, we need to take that route as we wait for the government.
All right.
So even if it means that we will open a smaller section or even one branch, then that is what we are going to do. Because as we keep on waiting, remember, we are also losing in terms of revenues.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Now, let's just get back into another directive that stood out when they were issued. It's the one regarding the 1.5 meter apart for the customers that will be in the business premises. Now, to my understanding, this means you're going to have reduced number of customers in your outlets, right?
Yes.
So, as a business, at the end of the day, the core function of a business is to make profit. And this will definitely mean that profits are going to be low. Are customers going to expect a hike in prices?
No, at this moment, we are not considering hiking the prices.
Yeah.
First of all, we need to get the foot traffic.
Okay.
And I'm sure once we open, and as much as we are going to reduce the number of clients, it's going to be better than what it is right now.
All right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for that. Now, you've definitely had a conversation with your peers who are in the same industry and a big sector that's going to be affected. Let's move away from Cafe Deli, which is sort of a high-end eatery, so to say, for lack of a better word, and move to these other people who are vending on the ground. I want to believe you've had conversations with them. What are they looking at? Because if they don't meet these sudden measures, they're going to be out of business. What have you heard from word on the streets?
Okay, one of the things that is very clear, establishments which are very small cannot open at this point.
Yeah.
Because what will be the point of, if, for example, an eatery which has a 70 or 60 seating capacity, and now when you put in place the 1.5 meters, then the 4 people per 10 square meters, it won't make any sense, because at a sitting you'll be required to have like 4 people or 6.
All right.
Yeah, so most of them are not keen on opening at this point because of now the regulations, which are very necessary at this point. Others, we are still on the same boat trying to figure out where our employees are going to get tested.
Yeah.
And then again, even the other requirements that have been put in place are also costly. Because we are now required to have the water, flowing water, hot and cold, at all entrances and at the dining areas.
Yeah.
Which is going to be expensive, but though it's necessary.
Yeah.
And then also have someone who keeps on checking temperatures throughout the day.
Okay.
That's another cost. And also buying the thermometers.
All right.
Yeah, so we are all in the same boat.
Okay.
We are trying to look at what we can do. And then, we need to do them at the shortest time possible.
Yes.
But then again, it's not in our hands.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we'll do everything in the checklist, but then we have to wait for the county officials to come and check if we have really complied.
Okay. Now, just as we wrap up this conversation, earlier on you mentioned that you had to take your employees on unpaid leave. And before this, you've just told me that the core desire of Cafe Daily is to resume business. You're not really looking at the cost. How are you going to be able to keep the business afloat when you bring back your employees, because they'll need to be paid, and at the same time you're incurring the costs that should have been incurred by the government?
First of all, we are not able to bring all the employees on board at this time.
Okay.
Keep in mind, the operation has not resumed normally.
Yeah.
Because we are operating from 5 to 4.
Okay.
And basically, we are not going to open at 5 because that is the time the curfew ends. So probably we'll open at 7.
Okay.
And then between 7 and 4, of course, the foot traffic is, as compared to the normal business operation, we had a lot of foot traffic from around 4 till late.
Yeah.
So now we are looking at 7 to 4. So by 3, everyone is in a rush to go home.
Okay.
That the clientele.
All right.
So it doesn't make any sense to bring all the employees on board, considering also the cost implication and the amount of work that is going to be there. It's not going to be the business as usual.
Yes.
Yes, we're going to cut down on the numbers of clients based on the sitting with the regulations that have been put in place.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, now just as we wrap this, you've definitely been in this industry for a while and managed different businesses, I want to believe. One last question. As Cafe Daily and as somebody who runs eateries, do you see yourselves getting back to normalcy? Do you ever see this industry resuming normalcy?
Yes, it is. It's going to take a while. That is one thing that we have to accept.
Yeah.
It's not going to be plug and play. It's going to take, most businesses are not going to recover even when COVID now ends.
Yeah.
Maybe even in a month's time, because what we've lost is too much.
Okay.
So it's a wait and see, but recovery, give or take, it will take almost another 1 year to recover from all this.
All right. Magdalene Wairimu, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you so much.
All right. That was Magdalene Wairimu, the managing director of Cafe Daily, which is a popular eateries within the city, and she believes that it's not a matter of plug and play, that with time they will resume normalcy, and they're hoping for the best. For those employees who are on unpaid leave, they will be bringing them back slowly, not a whole lot, and hopefully when they get to the level that they can, all other employees who are back at home can resume normal operations. Thank you very much for that. At this point, we'd love to take our second break, but don't go away. When we get back, we want to get an economical perspective of this whole situation. Do stay with us. Thank you very much for staying with us right here on TV47. Now, on this last bit of the show, I want to be joined by an economist to get his voice on certain issues, especially with regards to the directive that was given for the restaurants to resume operation, but under stringent measures from the Ministry of Health. Joining me right now is an economist by the name Johnson Deritu. Johnson?
Hi.
Hi, how are you doing?
Fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing okay. So let's just get straight into this. You know very well that the government gave out the directive that the restaurants should resume normal operations. Now, my first question is, how important was this for the local economy? Was it the right time for this to happen? Because some may argue that the graph is still rising in terms of the COVID cases, and it's a risky move to do.
Yes, it's obviously an eyebrow-raising announcement, but I almost can understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
In the sense that you have a scenario where people need to actually work. If you listen the numbers on the other side, people who've lost their work, people who've lost their way of life, it's actually very scary. And we are seeing riots in places like Russia. We are seeing riots in places like Lebanon, and I think this is a sort of trying to play the middle road, the trade-offs, because on one side, yes, there is the fear of the disease, which is very real, but on the other side as well, you've got another concern, which is poverty. Again, it's still a real issue. So it's really one of seeing where how you can manage the trade-offs.
All right. Now, Johnson, could you do me a favor? Could you reduce the volume of your television set? It's playing in the background.
Sorry, give me a second.
All right.
I'll be right back.
All right, viewers, we apologize for that small disruption, but we just wanted to set out the sound in the background. Let's continue with Johnson. Johnson.
Yes.
Now on to the next question. Now, agriculture is definitely a big part of the supply chain when it comes to the hotelier industry. And right before we started dealing with the pandemic of COVID-19, we had the issue of the invasion of the locusts. Now, my question is that, did the relevant authorities and the government assess the risk and the ripple effect of the invasion of locusts, or we just forgot about it and started dealing with the COVID-19?
I can imagine that they weren't given too much of a chance by the pandemic to make their calculations and see how best to go forward. But naturally, the locust damage was extensive. We're not pretty sure how extensive it is, but I know it must have been really bad, because a good chunk of our economy is, like you say, agricultural based.
Yes.
I think more than 30%, and a good chunk of it is subsistence farming.
Yeah.
And these are the people who are probably hit the most. So it's a good thing maybe that we've been seeing quite a bit of rainfall. I don't know how much that mitigates the entire issue, the entire problem.
Yes.
But obviously there has to be some damage done. So that only makes it more difficult for the government to consider the options, because again, the government may not have the money to feed the entire country, so some people have to work for their living.
All right. Now, just a couple of days, the CEO of the Kenya Association of Hotel Keepers and Caterers say that they are doing their very level best so that people don't lose their jobs, but in the event that the pandemic escalates and it gets worse, that they are risking losing close to 300,000 jobs. Now, when you talk of loss of jobs, we talk of the ripple effect of being consumer spending is low. There's also a fall in prices of commodities and everything in that sort. And when you talk of those two things, there's one thing that comes into mind. It's a recession. Do you see us heading there?
When I look at the nature of the lockdown we are going through, it's probably not as tight as we've seen other countries. The way they pursue the lockdown.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how tight it is. But certainly I can tell you the hospitality industry has been hit really hard. You can imagine, say for example, Nairobi, which gets quite a bit of business travel, even from within the country. Even ignore the fly-in tourists from within the country. Then you've got also fly-in tourists who are also not able to, come in and do business. And then you've got leisure travel as well. All that, all the beds we have on the table, around. I hear from the numbers I've had, I think we're talking about 80% of the inventory is not fully taken up. So you can imagine, and that business, there's a real estate to maintain.
Yes.
Probably there's been borrowings from banks. The supply chains, everybody who supplies these establishments, food and other support services, all that is, and the interesting aspect of course, foreign exchange. So all that has been taken offline.
Yes.
So my two primary concerns is how will those workers feed themselves? So a recession, hard to say, but we probably are looking at that.
All right. Now, when you talk of this directive that was issued out the other day for the restaurants to reopen, there needs to be a lot of reassurance to the public for them to actually go back to access these premises without having to worry about anything. Now, in the event that this fails, let's just say this directive fails, is there a plan B for the government?
I don't know. From the directives I've heard is that people will be allowed to access these facilities, but also there will be social distancing. So you've got this facilities will be operating below optimal capacity.
Yes.
So I'm just wondering whether it's actually worth it. I know obviously it's a graduated scale. For some people it probably will be worth it. For some people it probably won't make sense to hire staff, purchase inventory, cook, use energy, and only to generate revenues that are a fraction of those costs. But I know it will ease the pain for some people. But I'm not sure how even just from an economic perspective, whether the entire arrangement makes sense. But we pray that some people will find some relief through that.
All right. Now, last question before I let you go. From where you're sitting from an economical perspective, say the government didn't take this route of reopening the restaurants, what is the next best solution in terms of resuming normalcy of operations in the country, according to you, that is?
So allow me to borrow from the Bleach. I don't know if you caught the Bleach report when the American president was representing his some findings. One of the things we know is that sunlight. The virus has a 1.5 minute half-life when it's exposed to solar and to high temperatures and high humidity areas. So I think we can take advantage of some of that. So businesses that operate in the open air and in sunlight, I think, should be allowed to resume. I think, and it probably talking about open air markets and hawkers. I think with them, if they're even with the masks on, I think that's activity that would actually be beneficial. I don't think that we are probably. I mean, if this information is correct, then I think the risk there is probably very low.
Okay.
So those are areas we could look at.
All right. All right, Johnson, thank you very much for your time and your insight.
A pleasure.
All right, truly appreciate it. That was Johnson giving us his insights on how we can deal with this whole operation of resuming normalcy in the event that this pandemic, serious pandemic that we're dealing with, starts escalating and probably just we start experiencing fewer cases in terms of those who are testing positive. That's the route that we should be able to take. Unfortunately, every good thing has to come to an end, and at this point, that's the end of our show for today, midweek. I've been your host for this 1 hour ride. Until next time, be good, stay safe, and spread nothing but love.